Hey there, my name's Brashler, and in this video, I want to talk to you about some common issues that I see people running into with the Behringer X32 or Midas M32. Now, if you're brand new to my channel, I'm all about helping you feel more confident with production gear no matter where you're starting from. So let's go ahead and dive in. Now, the first most common issue that I see is people using too long of network cables that are not shielded. Now, the Behringer X32 uses AES50 as its stage box connection. That's its main protocol for using an external stage box. Now, AES50 is a digital protocol that works at 48 kilohertz or 44.1 kilohertz, and it's transmitted down a Cat5e cable that is shielded, and it does need to have the EtherCon connector on it. Now, I say Cat5e because the twist rate of Cat6 or Cat7 is a higher twist rate. So unless you're using a dedicated cable made for AES50, like the Rat Sound one, then you really need to be sticking with a Cat5e, and it needs to be shielded with the ground wire. So an STP or an FTP, which is a foil twisted pair, or a shielded twisted pair is STP. It has to have that ground connecting the two EtherCon shells on both sides. Now, the other thing is the Behringer X32 with AES50 has a max distance of 100 meters. Now, if you are using a Cat6 cable, it can work, but expect that your max distance is going to be less. Same thing with an unshielded cable. If you have a UTP cable, you can make it work. You can make it work. However, expect that your max distance will be less because you are not shielding that cable correctly. And also, if you have either of those two instances where you're going over the max distance or you're not using a shielded correct cable, then expect that you will have some pops and massive glitches in your future. Now, those massive pops and glitches will come at any random time. There's not a specific, yes, this works, or a specific, no, this doesn't. Sometimes there is, but in most cases, it will work until it doesn't. So make sure that you're using the correct cable. The next thing is utilizing only one AES50 line per box. So I have a DL32. It's a Midas DL32. It would be the same thing as a Behringer S32 or an SD16 or an S16. Any AES50 box that you are connecting your Behringer X32 to, you should only have one cable going from your Behringer X32 into the first port or the A port of that box. Now, you can use the B port of that box to then daisy chain to another box to include more inputs or have more outputs, but you should not take the same stage box and run two cables to that same stage box to the same X32. So for instance, on my A port, I have that plugged into the A port of my DL32. On my B port, I have that plugged into the B port of the same DL32. Now, what we'll notice is that on my A, it says DL32 plus. Now, that means that there's a second box that's connected to it. Now, we can also see that on my B port, it says DL32B, signifying that that's plugged into the B port of that DL32. Now, the issue comes in is a lot of people will think that this is a way of doing a redundancy. And unfortunately, that's not the case. If I unplug my A line, which is where my inputs are coming right here. So I have my channel 2 is coming from my A2, which is from my DL32. Now, if I unplug my A line, we will notice that there's nothing on the A line anymore because I've disconnected that AES50 line for the A port of my X32. Now, if I go grab my microphone and try and talk into this, it's not going to show up on this because there's nothing connected to it, because it's thinking that it's coming from the A port. Now, if I tried to switch to the B port, we also wouldn't have any connectivity. And that's because a DL32 or an AES50 stage box expects its clock on the A port of that specific box. So the DL32 that I have over here in my studio, it would not receive clock, which we can see that it is red right here, meaning that this won't ever be able to produce clean audio for my console to read. Now the other instance is if I take these and I swap them and have my A port connected into the B port and then my B port connected into the A port, and it's going to connect, but it's also going to have some issues. For instance, I do have audio here. It is working. However, if I disconnect one of the lines, we'll notice that I no longer have audio here. Because, again, this DL32 needs to have its clock sync from this console coming into the A port. So let me connect this back in. So this is currently flip-flopped. So A goes to B, B goes to A on this. This is an incorrect way of setting this up. Now notice, if I go to my channel here and I press View, I have trim. I don't actually have preamp control. So this is a trim, which is digital gain, not the head amp gain of that specific stage box. So because this says DL32B up here and then DL32 Plus, it is getting clock from my console. However, I don't actually have true preamp control over my head amp, which is a big problem because now I'm just applying digital gain to this channel, and it's just going to increase the noise level and not actually give me a true preamp gain. So the way to fix this is to have a single cable going from your AES50 A port or B port into the AES50 A port of that stage box, in which case now we will see that I have full preamp control on this, and I can adjust that however I need to actually get that preamp working on my Behringer X32. Now, these are two of the most common issues that I see with people using an X32 and a digital stage box, is that they run too many cables or it's being put into the wrong port. So always remember that either the A port or the B port coming from your Behringer X32 needs to go into the A port of the first stage box. And then if you add another stage box, that's totally fine. You can then use the B port of that first stage box and go into the A port of the second stage box. Now you can do that up to a total of 48 channels on an AES50 line. And now that's 48 channels input as well as 48 channels output. But keep in mind, the Behringer X32 has a max channel count of 32 channels, as well as your 6 auxiliary channels. So you are limited by the X32, by the internal channel count of your board. So you can't add 64 channels of inputs and all of a sudden have a 64-channel X32. So just keep that in mind as you're planning and distributing your stage boxes and setting up your audio system. Now, another common issue that I see is a mix bus accidentally being sent to the main left right. So let's give this an example here. So this is maybe a vocal microphone. So I have this on my channel 2 here. So let me go ahead and set my gain and get this to a reasonable level. So check 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and that is all set. So if I turn this up, we will start hearing it in the PA. So we can hear that. Now, with our mix buses, those are typically what we use for a monitor. So for instance, a floor wedge or an in-ear for the band to be able to listen to. Well, if I wanted to set that up, I would definitely use one of my bus masters. So here's my bus 1, and I'm going to turn this overall volume for this bus up, and then let's go ahead and add this microphone into that bus. So I can select my mix bus 1 over here on the right fader bank and press sends on fader, go find my channels, and then I can turn this microphone up into this bus. And as I talk into this, we'll see that it has audio going into this mix bus. Once we're done, press sends on fader again, and now we're back into mixing our console for the main PA. Now, as I have this selected, if I accidentally press stereo bus, then that means that this mix bus that is set for a monitor is being sent to the main left right. Now, this is important because a mix bus set up for a monitor should be set to pre-fader, meaning that if I adjust this volume of this fader down, it's not adjusting the volume for my musician up on stage in their floor wedge, which is exactly the way that you want it to have. But if I have this being sent to my stereo bus and I turn this channel down, well, this channel is still going through to the main PA. And that's because it's going from this channel pre-fader into my mix bus 1, which is then being sent to the stereo bus. And this is a very common thing that I see. So all you have to do is, if you have some weird things happening, go pull up every single mix bus and go one by one and go find to see if it's being sent to the stereo bus. And in which case my bus 1 is, so I can uncheck that. And then I can go through the rest of my mix buses to see if those are going to my stereo bus, in which case I am all set here. So now I should have full control over my volume to be able to go into the PA or not into the PA. Another common thing that I see is someone accidentally using the control room outputs that are on the back of the Behringer X32 for their main left-right. These two ports on the back of my console right here are made for your monitoring section. So we can see that there's a monitor level adjustment right here. Now this is made for setting up some near field speakers at your front of house position or at your broadcast position to be able to listen to your solos. So for instance, if I soloed my vocal microphone here, if I had some headphones and plugged them in, I'd be able to listen to this channel isolated by itself. Or if I had speakers plugged into these control room outputs, I would be listening to just this microphone because I've soloed this channel in those near fields. Now, if you happen to accidentally plug your main PA into these control room outputs, well, if you press solo on a channel, it would solo just that channel in your main PA, which is clearly a really bad idea. So my suggestion is to always make sure that you are plugging your outputs into the correct outputs on the back of your Behringer X32. By default, 7 and 8 are going to be your main left-right if you have a smaller version of the X32, or if you have the full size like this one, it would be 15 and 16 would be your main left-right. Now, of course, you can double check that by pressing routing and then tabbing all the way over until you get to out. And as we can see right here, here are my 16 outputs that I have, and 15 and 16 currently on my console are set to monitor. So let's go ahead and change 15 to being main left and then 16 to being main right. And then if you have a smaller version of the console, output 7 would need to be main left and output 8 would need to be main right. And then we have one more spot that we need to check. If we page select over until we get to XLR, we want to make sure that 1 through 4 is pulling from output 1 through 4. 5 through 8 is pulling from output 5 through 8. 9 through 12 is pulling from output 9 through 12. 13 through 16 is pulling from output 13 through 16. By having this set like this, your outputs that you have here are actually going to the correct outputs on the back of your Behringer X32. And then that ensures us that our patch that we have here is correct for the actual outputs that are on the back of the X32. Now, if you're utilizing a stage box like I have on my AES50 A, then we need to page all the way over until we get to AES50 A. And this represents the outputs that are coming from our board going to that stage box. So if I wanted to have my outputs 1 through 8 actually be outputs 1 through 8, then I would go to 1 through 8 and set that to outputs 1 through 8. And then because this is a DL32, it also has 9 through 16, which case that's pulling from 9 through 16. Now, if I had a smaller version of the stage box, for instance, it's an SD8 or an SD16, well, then maybe I only have those 8 outputs, in which case we can toggle between the outputs on that physical unit, or we can change it here on the board. But remember that if you have this set as 1 through 8 on output 1 through 8, it keeps it simple. 9 through 16 is set to 9 through 16. 17 through 24 is set to 1 through 8. Because remember, we only have 16 main outputs on the internal function of the X32. So by default, this should look just like this. 1 through 8, 9 through 16, and then 1 through 8, 9 through 16. And then the very important thing is, if you're utilizing a P16 system, have your P16 1 through 8 be on outputs 33 through 40. And then your P16 9 through 16 set up as 41 through 48. And that will ensure that you have all the outputs available to you on your stage box, as well as the Ultranet setup for if you're utilizing the P16 monitoring system. So if you are having some issues or weird things happening, check these different things to make sure that your console is routed correctly and connected correctly to your digital stage box. Now, I hope this video was helpful for you today. If you do happen to have any questions, or there's a video that you're hoping that I would make on the X32 or really any production equipment that's out there, please post that in the comment section down below. I'm always reading through those comments to find videos that are going to be helpful for you. If you haven't already, make sure to check out my website at drew@brashler.com, where I have some digital downloads as far as presets for channels or effects or some scenes that are already pre-built for your Behringer X32, your X-Air, or your Behringer Wing, as well as the M32 and the M-Air series. So go check that out if you're interested. Otherwise, I hope you have a great day.